We're going to
How
make
are you?
this really painless for you because 4 o'clock on, oh, I'm supposed to go for a walk. I'll hold off till after we get done. It's 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. I know, don't you have one more debate tonight?
No, I think that's it. We just finished up our last one, the 9 News debate, and then we had a forum. I think it was yesterday. I think with
Okay,
the Denver. That was it.
with
Yeah.
the Denver Chamber. Okay, but it's still 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. So what we've been doing with everybody is all of us on this call, and if you notice, Patricia Brewster Wilkie is on here
Yep.
calling
Hi,
in
Corey.
from Ireland.
Hi, Darlene.
Are you really in Ireland?
Yes,
I'm in Ireland, yes.
Oh my gosh. That's great.
she's
I'm
been
a
day
COVID
with us.
captive.
What time is it there?
It's exactly 11 o'clock at night.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we were having lunch. She was eating her supper, so
Very good. Very good.
hung in there with us. But what we're doing is very informal, very casual. Tell us why you're running for another term, what you think your big accomplishments are, and what you want to do if you get reelected. What are the big things on the horizon then?
Well, you bet, Kathy. Well, thank you to Pro 15 for the chance to be with all of you today. It's great to see you and familiar faces on the call. Look, I've worked hard over the last 6 years to become the third most bipartisan member of the United States Senate. That's not just me saying it. That's the study done by the Lugar Institute. I think it's out of George Washington University that has made that study. I've worked hard to pass more laws into effect than the entire Colorado congressional delegation combined. And I think tomorrow they'll sign another one of my laws into effect. And this law is one of those that, I'm going to be pretty excited about it when it goes into effect because it creates a 3-digit national hotline for suicide prevention. Right now, if you need help, you're going to have to remember at least a 10-digit long phone number that may vary by state. Colorado has 2 of them, but this is going to make it a 988 3-digit national hotline, just like 911 that you'd call for a report of fire. You'll call 988 if you need help. In Colorado, we lose somebody every 7 hours to death by suicide. This is going to save lives, and it's going to make a big difference. And it's if you just press 1, when this is all set up, it's going to have a system where you press 1 for veterans care, and you will be referred to a specialist in veterans needs as well, because we've now lost more people in Colorado from veterans from suicide than we have from combat in the Middle East. And so that's something that I think that we can do a better job of. 6 years ago when I ran, I said that I wanted to be a voice for all 4 corners of Colorado. I'm the only member, a statewide congressional delegation. Actually, I'm the only statewide elected official in Colorado, period, at the state or federal level, statewide, that is from rural Colorado, that lives more than 30 miles away from Denver and Boulder. Somebody who understands agriculture and somebody who understands our rural needs and our rural challenges and opportunities. I talked about a 4 corners approach 6 years ago to Colorado, focusing on our economy, focusing on energy, focusing on our environment and education. Over the last 6 years, we've accomplished great things in every one of those areas. In education, passing legislation to focus on our minority students, making sure that we're reaching out to every student and succeeding with every student. I passed the American Innovation and Competitiveness Act, which rewrote our federal STEM programs, science, engineering, mathematics programs, to make sure that we're getting unrepresented and underrepresented communities involved in our STEM and engineering programs, and increase our engagement in areas like rural Colorado and with women and minorities into the engineering fields. Working on legislation for student loans to try to help make student loans more affordable. I think I'm the only member of Congress, or at least a member of the Senate, that probably has a student loan still. I'm the third youngest member of the Senate, so most of my other colleagues were there a long time ago. And then on energy, of course, we've had some great successes on energy. Passage of the Asia Reassurance Initiative Act, which creates a U.S.-Asia energy partnership to promote everything from renewable clean energy development in Colorado to natural gas exports to places like South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. Also was able to succeed in getting the production tax credit for wind and solar extended beyond the 2017 tax cuts and continue to work on investment tax credits for battery storage, because that's going to be revolutionary in how we are able to adapt to a clean energy future. I also believe that it's important that we had export opportunities for our energy production in Colorado. We were able to secure that and succeed with that. In terms of the environment, we just passed the Great American Outdoors Act. It got signed into law. It's been hailed as the holy grail of conservation bills. That was according to the Nature Conservancy. And if you look at the work that we have done on the Great American Outdoors Act, it's the largest investment ever into our public lands. Not just since the last 50 years, but in the history of our country. It's the most money ever that has gone into our public lands. And that's, of course, without any cost to the taxpayer. That is paid for by offshore oil and gas revenues. So we've also increased funding for the National Renewable Energy Laboratory by nearly 50% over the last couple of years. And working with our Akron Research Station, got legislation passed out of the Farm Bill that will help develop new dryland oilseed cropping and technologies. Because you think about it, in agriculture, what do we need? We need more value-added opportunities. We need more value-added opportunities, because it's not just enough to be able to sell the corn or the wheat or cattle. We got to be able to sell something beyond just that. So if we can turn that kernel of corn or that grain of wheat or that new dryland variety of oil seed into a gallon of renewable fuel, that's going to be value added and more dollars back into our rural communities. If we could start, that kind of idea, if we could work on processing smaller local owned co-ops when it comes to meat processing and packing plant kind of ideas, breaking down from the big corporations to locally owned and smaller facilities where we can actually do that, connecting the farmer to the table, would be a great value add that we can promote in agriculture, ways to bring new generations of farmers and ranchers back to the farm and ranch, and to keep existing farmers and ranchers on the farm and ranch. So those are all critically important things that we've been working on the economy as well. Our opportunity zones that we created, I sponsored that bill with Tim Scott and Cory Booker and Michael Bennett. Opportunity zones, 60% of them in Colorado are in rural areas, and we need to continue to improve on those opportunity zones. We've got some that have seen great success in housing and driving down the cost of housing and helping with affordable housing, but we need to actually start seeing some of the jobs that are being created and invested, with jobs being hired in the opportunity zone. If you're a wage earner in an opportunity zone, you're making about 7-8% more in wages in an opportunity zone than you are outside of an opportunity zone. It's helping our lowest wage earners earn more wages. And between 2018 and 2019, we saw the western part of the United States actually have including Colorado, a 7% increase in household income as a result of the economic policies that we pursued. And obviously we have the pandemic that we have to deal with today. And three things that we have to address. So that's what we'll continue to into the next term as well. So building on those legacy of successes, Kathy, you asked about the next term, building on those legacy of successes and continuing them into the next 6 years with a focus on rural development, rural opportunity, broadband development, deployment, infrastructure development, deployment. That's why I introduced the legislation on the Ports to Plains highway and interstate designation, which I'm excited about, and continuing our work on telehealth expansions and making sure that we continue to invest in schools and education opportunities, and all around making sure that no nook and cranny of the state is forgotten. I-70 doesn't end at Strasburg. I-76 doesn't end at Hudson. We got to make sure that we take care of the Lamars and the Yumas and the Fort Morgans and everywhere in between and beyond. And just to give you an example of that, a couple weeks ago, we broke ground on the Arkansas Valley Conduit. Now, in southeastern Colorado, in 1962, President John F. Kennedy went to Pueblo and he gave a speech. And in that speech, he talked about the construction of a drinking water pipeline to provide 50,000 people with clean drinking water, going from Pueblo, Colorado, all the way out to Lamar. In 1962, he signed that law into effect. We finally got the money to build the pipeline a couple of months ago. We broke ground on it a couple of weeks ago. And it's going to provide 50,000 people with clean drinking water. And the project itself will probably cost around $610 million, believe it or not. U.S. Chamber of Commerce says that for every $1 million you spend on infrastructure, it creates 6 to 7 jobs. So this project could create nearly 4,000 jobs over the next many years, several years, as we get this built from Pueblo to Lamar. So I'm excited about that, and we'll continue to build on that and continue to build on those successes, opportunities, those value-added opportunities, and to make sure that we create jobs and new investments in rural areas. So that's just a long-winded way, Kathy, of explaining some of the work that we've done in the last 6 years and how I'll approach the next 6 years.
We're asking questions through the chat room, but you don't have a question, you have a comment. The 3-digit suicide line is an amazing accomplishment. Claudia mentioned it on here, but I think all the rest of us feel the same way. And I did not realize that the veterans were becoming, I knew we were having a much bigger problem with agricultural suicide, but I didn't realize that it was also in the veterans. So that, yes, will be very big in the health and human services part of our region.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Who knows what's going to happen on November 3rd? I don't think anybody does. But how, if it should be that the House, the Senate, and the White House all turn blue and become Democrat, how do you feel you'll be able to get these projects you're talking about and be able to carry them through?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kathy. And if you look at the bills that I have passed into law, about half of them were signed into law by Barack Obama. Half of them were signed into law by President Trump. So I've been able to work with both sides of the aisle, both presidents from both parties, to get our work done. And the thing about the Senate is, it's designed to force people to work together because it requires unanimous consent to get anything done. And so all of the bills that I've passed that I mentioned, the Asia Reassurance Initiative Act, the American Innovation and Competitiveness Act, the 988 Suicide Prevention Hotline, the Great American Outdoors Act, all of them had strong, tremendous bipartisan support. Like the Asia Reassurance Initiative Act, my North Korea legislation, the Innovation Act, all of them passed under Barack Obama, and they were signed by Barack Obama. So if you start with something that's bipartisan, it ends with the bipartisanship. And in the Senate, you actually have to have bipartisanship in order to get anything done. So I feel confident that I can continue that work and that record of success. I think we have done more. We've brought the Bureau of Land Management headquarters to Grand Junction, Colorado. I led that effort. I led the effort to get U.S. Space Command opened up in Colorado Springs. I led the effort to get the Arkansas Valley Conduit done, to return Anvil Points dollars to the Western Colorado, about $20 million worth of energy revenues that should have been returned 20 years ago to the Western Slope. But we finally got the money back into those 3 counties' hands just last year. All of that's been done with bipartisan support. And I think you have to go back, I don't even know if you have to go back 70, 80 years in Colorado history to see a senator that has had that record of success in Colorado with getting things done.
So everybody here's just putting praise remarks in the chat room. That is just not a good thing. But anyhow, not to mention your help saving Southwest Chief on Amtrak.
And Southwest Chief, oh my gosh, you think about the Southwest Chief, the work we've been able to do there, the grants we've been able to help both Colorado, Kansas, and New Mexico most recently get. It's incredibly important. And, we're working right now through some tough times on these long haul routes, because COVID's had a dramatic effect on it. So we're making sure that Amtrak doesn't use this as an excuse to cut that back or curtail it. So we're fighting hard to make sure that they continue that. Because, the Southwest Chief and that Front Range Rail idea could be a neat opportunity for us to expand both mass transit opportunities and getting people out to different parts of Colorado. And all of us have, except for, Patricia, how long have you been in Ireland?
I've been in Ireland since the beginning of December.
Okay, so
I was due to come back in March.
Yeah.
And then it was
COVID.
pretty obvious.
Yeah. But you've been there. You weren't there too long to see. You've seen the growth in Keensburg and the growth in Deer Trail out in the Eastern Plains with all these new houses taking place. And so, and Wiggins, of course, has seen tremendous growth as well. And that Southwest Chief Front Range Rail could be part of that solution as people are trying to find affordable housing and different places to live. And if the telecommuting that has taken place during COVID-19 continues, and I believe it will, we're going to see opportunities for the Otises and the Akrons and the Fort Morgans and the Yumas to see even additional growth as people say, hey, I don't have to live in the congested cities. I can do work from somewhere else, and we need to facilitate that. And that's the Southwest Chief is part of that transportation solution.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? I may go back here and look at what they've asked other people.
Well, what I think is funny, Kathy, about all these Zooms is, remember when we first started doing these Zooms, the raise your hand function consisted of this. And we all sat there on video raising our hands. Now we all know how to use the raise your hand buttons and the Q&A
Yeah, we could do the thumbs up and the applause, you know. They need those two, though. They need to really increase them. We need a few more. Well,
it's no problem. On the broadband front of things, we've got, I've made the joke, and some of you may have heard me say it, that I can find 5 bars in my hometown. I just can't find 5 bars on my cell phone. So we need better connectivity.
Yeah, mine off and on today has been saying,
Oh, that may have made the point right there. I may have lost you.
No, but I'm okay now, but it's been saying on and off, your signal's getting weak, and I'm like, oh, just shut up, out of my way. Here's a question for you. Do you believe some media's depiction of your competitor's edge in the current polls?
Look, we always know Colorado is competitive. I describe Colorado not as a blue state or a purple state, but as a red and blue state. You've got about 44 to 45% of the state that's going to vote blue. You've got about 44, 45% of the state that's going to vote red. And then you've got that 10 to 12% that who knows where they go on election day. So and so Colorado is a very, it's a very deeply divided state. It's a partisanized state in terms of left and right. And so it's not a blue and sort of like everybody's just kind of moderate. No, you got deep blue, deep red with 12% in the middle that are making up their mind. And so that's where we have right now to work on. And I feel good about where we're at. This is a margin of error race with an environment that, if you think about the last 10 months alone, impeachment, pandemic, racial riots and unrest, a president who got COVID-19, who got the pandemic, and a death of a Supreme Court justice. That's all in the last 10 months.
I know right now during COVID may not be the ultimate time, but what are your thoughts on how we get our national debt back under control?
Yeah, so a couple things on that, Kathy. A great question. I worry that on January 1st, 2021, if we look back at our country and our economy and we say, man, everybody's back at work and the economy's strong and things are great, I wish we wouldn't have spent that much money. That would be a really great luxury to have, because we cannot sit on January 1st, 2021, look back and say, boy, nobody's at work, the economy's collapsed, everything's terrible, I wish we would have spent more money. So that's the thing. So we are going to have to do what it takes to get this economy back on track and get our doors open again. This is not an instance where, Mom's Diner in Otis closed because of bad food. It's not closed, by the way. I'm not saying that, but it didn't shut down over the COVID-19 because of bad food. It slowed down and saw the business loss because we said, hey, socially distance, limit capacity, those kinds of things. So we have to make sure we take the responsibility of government to get things back open and running again. But I do think on the debt and deficit issue, Kathy, here's what we need to do. Because long-term, structurally, we have a huge, massive crisis on our hands. So whether we deal with it, in 1 year or 5 years, it is a major, major looming crisis. Here's what we need to do. I believe we need a federal balanced budget amendment. Number 2, I believe we have to continue with economic growth policies like we had prior to the pandemic to grow the economy, because more people earning more money, investing more dollars will result in more revenues back to the federal government. You cannot tax our way out of this. You cannot cut our way out of this. You could put a confiscatorial tax policy in place, taking a 100% share of anyone earning more than $10 million a year. Take 100% of their salary, and you still wouldn't. We still couldn't pay for our debt and deficit. So, and plus that would kill the economy in the meantime. So we have to have balanced budget amendment. We have to have economic growth. We do need to cut spending where it makes sense. And here's what I mean by that. Every year, the Government Accountability Office comes out with a report that identifies billions and billions of dollars in duplicative and overlapping spending. We should take a look at that report. The work's done. Take that report and act on it. That would save billions and billions of dollars. And then you have to make sure that we have a regulatory environment that is conducive to that economic growth. Those are just a few of the things that we need to be doing on the debt and deficit side.
Okay, another question for you is plans for immigration reform.
Yeah, look, we need to. I think about this often, that if Jamie and I were living anywhere else in the world with our 3 kids, I think about what we would be doing right now to try to get into the United States, that we would be doing everything we could to get into the United States. And so we need an immigration system that reflects that. Senator Bennett and I introduced a bill last Congress. We had it voted on. Unfortunately, it fell about 6 or 7 votes shy of passing. We had more than a majority of support, but we didn't get above the 60-vote filibuster threshold. It addressed security, because we all recognize we need border security. That doesn't mean a wall in every square mile, but it does mean that you have, maybe personnel, or maybe an electronic system, or maybe you have a physical barrier. But it also means judges who can process asylum cases, and it means roads on the border so that we can actually have this. It means a system that isn't backlogged and backed up, so we avoid the horrible conditions that we saw children and families face on the border. So that's one of the ideas. The other idea, of course, is an entry-exit system that we fix. It's estimated that of the 12 million people here in the United States that came without documentation, 42% of them came legally, the valid visa, but they overstayed their visa. And so we need to fix that and just make sure that we know who's here, who's not, what to do afterwards. We should pass the DREAM Act. That's a no-brainer. We had the DREAM Act included in our legislation, the Four Corners bill that we had. And again, we fell about 6 or 7 votes shy. We don't charge children, 5-year-old kids who walk across our front yard with trespass. We shouldn't hold people who came here of no fault of their own without documentation in violation of law either. We should pass the DREAM Act. We need a guest worker system that works. We've been working on the House bill that passed out of the House. Tom Tillis, Dianne Feinstein, and I have been working on a Senate companion to that. But our guest worker program needs to recognize that agriculture is different for different industries in agriculture. A dairy's needs are 365 days a year. Robert Cicada's onions are seasonal. So we need to make sure that the guest worker program has a seasonal aspect to it. And if you get your labor after the season is over, it doesn't really help. So we need to make sure that labor, that guest worker program, works for the seasons, that provides the 365-day a year help for those who need that. And it needs to be for agriculture. It also needs to be for high tech and healthcare as well. And, I think I've shared the story with you before about the doctor who was from India and wanted to go legally documented immigrant, but his mother was dying and he wanted to go home to say goodbye to his mom. And under our system of immigration, he had to stay out of the country for 2 years before he could come back. That doesn't make any sense. So the law actually encourages him to either not say goodbye to his mom, which is a horrible thing, or for him to sneak out and sneak back in, which is also a horrible thing. So there's a lot of, those are just some of the components of immigration. We voted for a number of immigration bills. I've written a number of the immigration bills to make that work. We're working on the guest worker program now, working to expand the H-2A, H-2B visa programs for both tech and ag, H-1B, you name it. We're working on them all to make those programs actually work, representing the needs while balancing security.
Okay, that was the last question. And any final thoughts? And we'll let you go to have a great weekend.
Well, first of all, have a great weekend. Thank you to Pro 15 for having me on this afternoon. It's great to see everybody. And I'll just leave it with this. The last, must have been March or April. It was the last weekend I was in church before everything went online. And in the great Lutheran tradition of Yuma, it took us quite a while to figure that out too. But we were reviewing a passage at church, and it said, out of our struggles and tribulations, comes perseverance. And out of perseverance comes character, is built character. And out of that character comes hope. And I think if there's ever a time for hope in our country and hope in humanity and hope that we get through a challenging time together, it's now. And so I'd be honored to earn your support, honored to earn your vote, and I'm going to continue to work hard for each and every one of you. So thank you very much for the chance to be with all of you today. And I look forward to the day when we can finally see each other in person again.
Well, and I must, because I've got money on the line here, but I want to commend your staff, especially Darlene. She just does a really outstanding job. And Jared does too. So Jared, you can pay me later also along with
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
great week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Leanne, do you want to do a wrap up for us?
I just want to thank everyone who attended and stayed with us for these 3 days. I know it's the end of our conference, but it was so productive and very good. I love the discussions, and thank you all.
Yes. Thank you all very much. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Bye.
weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Kathy.